In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the tiles group in the Create tab of the Timesavers add-in. Now, this is newly updated, and if you have used it before I did this update, then you'll notice that it looks quite different to how it looked before. The way that it works is a little bit different in terms of the way that you'll actually use it, but in terms of what it does, it's basically the same. Okay, it's just the way you input your information and so on that's going to be a bit different. So you'll see over here you've got two fields that are list and range. These are indicators which we're still going to get to later on in the video, but first we're going to be looking at this part of the tiles group. Now this over here is where you put in your content. Now previously you were able to choose between numbers and letters, lowercase, uppercase letters, and if you chose letters, then you would select your option and just click on the create button and it would just create them. Now, if you want to do lowercase letters, you just need to type in the range A to Z. Now over here, I'm using a hyphen to indicate my range because that is what the default range indicator is over here. So A to Z is how I would type that in. I have made it possible for you to change that, and I'm going to show you why later on. But if I just type in A to Z and I click on create, you'll see that it creates all my tiles from A to Z, and it's lowercase letters because I used lowercase letters over there. Okay, now I can also do the same thing for capital A to capital Z, and when I do that, it will then create my tiles for capital A to capital Z using uppercase letters. So if you want to do lowercase letters, you just use lowercase letters in the content field over here. If you want to do uppercase letters, you just type in uppercase letters in the content field over there. You can also do the same thing for numbers as well. So if you want to create tiles for a number range, you just need to type in whatever range you want to use. So say I want to create tiles for the range 1 to 20, then I'll just type that in and I'll click on create, and it'll make all of those tiles for me counting in ones. Now, if you want to create tiles that are not counting in ones, if you want to create tiles where you have a different counting interval like 2s or 5s or 10s, then the way you would do that is you would start off your content information by saying what interval you want to count in. So if I want to count in 2s, I'll put a 2 and then an S. That S tells it that you are wanting to count in 2s. And then if you just click on create, it will automatically create tiles, or the first 10 multiples of 2. If you want to create for a different number range, so if you don't want to do the first 10 multiples, if you want to do more, or if you want to do a different number range that starts higher up, or if you want to do numbers that aren't necessarily multiples of 2 but just counting in 2s from a particular number, then you need to put your range in. So I'm going to start off by keeping it as 2s because that's how the add-in knows that you want to count in 2s. And then I'm going to put my number range in that I want to use. So if I want to have counting in 2s for the number range 1 to 30, then that is what I will type in over there. And I can click on create. Now you'll see over here it goes 1, 3, 5, 7. It starts on the 1 because that is the first number that I had in my range over here. If I wanted it to be multiples of 2, then I would need to start on a multiple of 2. So this would need to be 2 to 30. So if I click create now, it goes from 2 up to 30. So if you want to have a skip counting type of number range, you need to put in whatever interval you want and then followed by an S, and then you put the range that you want. If you just want the first 10 multiples, you can just put the number and S. If you don't put a number and S, then it will just count by ones like normal, like it did in the first example that I did over here. Okay, now part of the reason that I did this update to the add-in is also because I was asked to make it possible to create tiles for words as well as for numbers and letters. So that is what you can now do, is you can create tiles for words as well. So if you want to create tiles for words, you just need to list them. So if I want to do tiles for, say, cat, dog, mouse, hamster, fish, bird, and so on, then I will just type those in. Please note, I'm not putting any extra spaces. Any spaces that I put in will be considered part of the text. Now, the reason I did that is because just in case you want to actually create something that uses content that needs the spaces to exist, I could have made the spaces all just disappear, but I chose not to because you might want to have content that is supposed to have spaces in it. So I don't want to make spaces disappear that aren't supposed to disappear. So just don't put any spaces in that are not supposed to be there. Okay, so just your words separated by commas, because comma is the default list separator. Okay, so now I'm going to click on create, and now you can see that all of those have been created. Now, I could have chosen to make my tiles with other shapes as well, or with pictures. As I said, we're still going to look at that, but those are the tiles that have been created for the content that I put in over there. Okay, now you can also create tiles for a mixture of content. So what you can do now, which is new, is that you can create tiles for your lowercase letters and your uppercase letters and a number range and words all in one go. What you can do is, if you want to do lowercase letters A to Z, small a to Z, then if you put a comma and you put more content, it will take each of the things in your list and it will create the tiles for each of those. You can have ranges in your list as well, like this A to Z range over there. So I can have small a to Z, I can have capital A to Z, I can also have 1 to 20, I can also have counting in threes. I'll just do counting in threes, that'll give me the first 10 multiples of 3, and I can also have counting in fives, and we'll go from 2 to 20, no, 2 to 50. Okay, then I can also put in individual letters if I want to. So I could have A, I could have F, I could have G, I could have individual words if I wanted to. So I can have my cat and dog. And now when I create my tiles, everything that I've put into that input field is going to be used. So long as I have put my input in using the correct list separators and the correct range indicators, then it will create the tiles in the way that I want it to. So I'm going to click on create. Now you can see over here, I've got my small a to Z, my lowercase letters, then I've got my uppercase A to Z, then I've got my numbers 1 to 20, then I've got the first 10 multiples of 3, from 3 to 30. Then I've got starting from 2 up to 47, that was skip counting by fives, starting at 2. Then I've got A and F and G, I put those letters in separately, and I've got cat and dog. So all of the information that I put into my content field over here has now been used to create tiles. So when you create tiles, you can create a whole range of tiles using a mixture of content as well if you want to. Then also, the reason, now I come to this over here, the reason that I put this option over here to put in your list separator and your range indicator is because just in case you have content that you need to use that you're wanting to create tiles for, which either uses a comma or uses a hyphen, then you can change these characters to something different so that it doesn't confuse the add-in. So say for instance you want to create number tiles for negative numbers, which wasn't possible before. If you want to create number tiles for a range of negative 10 to negative 3, for instance. Now you'll see that I have a negative, a negative, a negative. Now what happens is this add-in interprets all of these hyphens as range indicators. And if I try and create it, it's going to give me a message here saying that there's a problem with the content that I've given. You can't have something that looks like that. It's not going to work. So what we can do instead is we can change this. I can change that, say, to that symbol. Now this symbol is now going to be my range indicator. So that is what I will put in between my minimum and my maximum value of my range. So I can say negative 10 to negative 3, and now it's not going to get confused. So if I click on there, now I can have my tiles going from -10 to -3. So now you can create tiles for negative numbers, which you couldn't do before. Okay, so once you finish with that, you can then change this back to the default, so it's easy to use for other things as well. But that is just if you do have content that needs to have a negative in, or that needs to have a hyphen. If you have a word that you need to put into your, or you need to create a tile for, and you've got a word that's hyphenated, then you don't want that hyphen to cause a problem. So there are situations that you may want to change that range indicator to something else so it doesn't interfere with the content that you are putting in. Obviously, you can't do a tiles for a range of one word to another word. It's not going to work. It's going to say that there's a problem and it just won't work. So just be aware of that. So the range indicator obviously needs to be used with numbers or letters. Then you've got your list separator as well. Similar to the range indicator, you can change the list separator if you need to. So if you've got text that you want to use on your tiles, which includes a comma, then you can change your list separator to something else. So if I changed it to a slash, for instance, then I could have A/B/C, then it'll now interpret that as a list with A, B, and C, and it'll create 3 tiles because I changed my list separator now to slashes. So that is an option as well if you need to. If you have content that needs to be able to use commas, then you don't want it to get confused thinking that it's separating the list. Okay, so that is what those are there for. Now, like I said, you can create generic tiles, which are just using the default shape that you have on PowerPoint. So that in all of these ones that I was doing, it was just creating those blue squares every time. But you can also create tiles with all of the different content options that we've done, with other shapes that you choose in advance. So you can create tiles, say over here, I'm going to put that one in, and I'm going to put that one in, and I'm going to put that one in, and that one. So now I've got all of these tiles, or these are my base shapes that I'm going to be using for my tiles. And when I create my tiles now, it will use, if I have selected these shapes, any shapes that I have selected, it will use as the base for the tiles. So I can create tiles for 1 to 50, and when I create it, it will take those shapes that I had and it will repeat them in a pattern as it creates the tiles. So it'll do the first 4 and then it will go back to the first one again, and it will repeat that pattern as it creates the tiles until it gets to the last tile. So you can do that. You can also use pictures as well. So I can put in pictures like this, and if I have those selected when I create my tiles, then it will do the same thing. It will create all of those tiles using those pictures that I had, and it will put, because it obviously can't put text directly onto the picture, what it does is it puts a text box over the picture and groups them together for you. So you automatically have your tiles created with a picture and then with the text in a text box on top of it, all grouped together. And again, just like it did with the shapes that I used, it does it in a pattern. So you've got whatever you select in the order that you selected them, it will then repeat the pattern with those, in this case with the pictures. And that is how you use the tiles group in the Create tab of the Time Savers add-in. I hope that has been helpful, and I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you. Goodbye.